I'd like to share with you this evening a passage from Romans chapter 8. I'm going to pick up in the middle of the chapter here. So then, brothers, we don't owe our old nature that would require us to live according to our old nature. For if you live according to your old nature, you'll certainly die. But if by the Spirit you keep on putting to death the practices of the body, you will live. All who are led by God's Spirit are God's sons. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to bring you back again into fear. On the contrary, you received the Spirit who makes us sons, and by whose power we cry out, Abba, that is, dear Father. The Spirit himself bears witness to our own spirits that we are children of God, and if we are children, then we are also heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Messiah, provided we are suffering with him in order to be glorified with him. I don't think the sufferings we are going through now are even worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed to us in the future. The creation waits eagerly for the sons of God to be revealed, for the creation was made subject to frustration, not willingly, but because of the one who subjected it. But it was given a reliable hope that it too would be set free from its bondage to decay and would enjoy the freedom accompanying the glory that God's children will have. We know that until now the whole creation has been groaning as with the pains of childbirth, and not only it, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we continue waiting eagerly to be made sons, that is, to have our whole bodies redeemed and set free. It was in this hope that we were saved. But if we see what we hope for, it isn't hope. After all, who hopes for what he already sees? But if we continue hoping for something we don't see, then we still wait eagerly for it with perseverance. Similarly, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we don't know how to pray the way we should, but the Spirit himself pleads on our behalf with groanings too deep for words. The one who searches hearts knows exactly what the Spirit is thinking, because his pleading for God's people according to God's will. Furthermore, we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called in accordance with his purpose. Because those whom he knew in advance, he also determined in advance would be conformed to the pattern of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he has thus determined in advance, he also called. And those whom he called, he also caused to be considered righteous. And those whom he caused to be considered righteous, he also glorified. There is a work of transformation that God has brought us to. The work of transformation that God has brought us to is simple and is straightforward. God called humanity to leave behind a life which is normal and natural to us, and has instead said to us, I am offering you the opportunity for new life. And the opportunity for new life is a straightforward invitation. The straightforward invitation that God has is that anyone who will call on him, anyone who will receive the fact that God has stepped into the mortal sphere and will accept a bloody sacrificial death that really deals with sin, these are invited to walk with God. And when you walk with God in this life, the truth is this, that it is not God's heart that once you start walking with him, that you cease to be. And so people say, well, why do people who have a biblical faith believe that they are going to live with God forever? First and foremost, it's easy. It's because God has said this is his plan and his purpose. Secondly, God has been really clear that he is doing a redeeming work in those who belong to him. And who they used to be, they are not now. And the cleansing and the purification process moves through us such that it may take our entire lives, but in taking our entire lives, it's going to do a good and a great thing. And the good and great thing that it's going to do is prepare us to stand before God. You know, there's some people who want to end up, avoiding punishment and destruction, but they're not really sure that they want to be with God. That is the purpose of the life that God has us in, to cleanse us and purify us from the desires to be a different people and to be a people who aren't interested in walking with him. I picked up in the middle of Romans chapter 8, where Rav Shaul ends up saying, "Brothers, we don't owe a thing to our old nature that would require us to live according to our old nature." And one of the promises that God makes is that as we pursue him, if we ask, he will pour out his Spirit upon us. And this is the start of our being cleansed and being purified. Now, I know that there's some people who are not believers in Messiah who will look at this and say, well, you don't know. I've met people who claim to follow God, and they're badly behaved. There's a couple responses to that. One response to that is maybe they're badly behaved now, but you have no idea how badly behaved they were before God got a hold of them. It is a process. It's also an invitation. There are those who are horrifically badly behaved currently, and God is saying, you are loved, the price for your wickedness and for your horror has been paid, and you are invited to be with me forever. And you know, I've also met people who say, well, you know, if I walked into a house of worship, the whole place would collapse in on me because I've been so bad. Yeah. You're pretty impressed with what you've accomplished or what you think you've accomplished. The honest truth is that horrifically evil people have been called to follow Messiah. And what you have done is just common to humanity. And Messiah is able to cleanse, he's able to purify, he's able to bring you to a place where you can be transformed, you can be changed, you can be made alive. But once the transaction has happened, the call for us is to live different lives and to be a different people. The other thing that Shaul writes, and he did not write in an era of great wealth like the era that many of us live in. He did not write in an era of wonderful medicine. He didn't write in an era of minimal suffering. He didn't write in an era of great comfort. He didn't write in an era where people from the very top of society to the very bottom of society would rarely know hunger or privation. He wrote in an area that really did suffer. And we in the West are just starting to have a little bit of a taste of suffering with the ongoing pandemic and the things that are going on right here and right now. But, you know, he writes, I don't think the sufferings we are going through now are even worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in the future. God has wonderful things that are planned for those who embrace him. Indeed, as he's writing in this passage, he's even writing that the very earth itself is waiting for the revelation of who we are going to be and who God has made us to be. And that for us to come into a place where God is going to do kindness and graciousness to us, even the earth is going to get healed and is going to get better when Messiah comes and puts things right. And I mean, I really don't think that we commonly think of the earth as suffering based on our behavior, but Shaul sees how that's possible and how that's right. Here is my encouragement at this point in time. My encouragement to you is really simple and is really straightforward. We are going through difficulty right now. A significant pandemic has started. People are being admitted to the hospital. People are in danger of dying, and indeed, in all likelihood, there will be some people who do end up dying from this, no matter how advanced and how wonderful the medicine is. People have died throughout human history, and we are fortunate and should be grateful to live in a society and a place where the heart of the society is that people should not be cut off before they have lived to a good, ripe old age. Even in our society, we desire for people who are elderly to be able to enjoy the fruits of as long a life as is humanly possible. We are facing something that is unusual to us. This is something that our grandparents knew. I mean, the Spanish influenza in 1918 killed many people in the United States, and indeed with the soldiers who went from the United States to Europe, it even moved through European society towards the end of World War I. It was horrific. It killed many people. Polio was a disease that was horrific and that has been arrested and stopped since before I was born. There have been other diseases that have happened, but in the West, we've gotten accustomed to the idea that if you live in a wealthy and a rich country, you're not going to end up getting impacted the way poorer societies do. But there's no promise that we will not go through difficulty. There is no promise that there will not be suffering. There is no promise that there isn't difficulty. And indeed, Scripture recognizes that living to 70 years old is a blessing, and living to 80 years old is possible for those who are strong. But there was never an expectation that we're going to live forever in this life. And the promise to those who belong to the Lord, the promise to those who seek God and find Him, the promise is simple and it's easy. The promise is what we suffer in this present age redeems us. What we suffer in this present age does a work of bringing us to a place of refinement, a place of renewal. The promise is that all the things that come upon us, if we belong to the Lord, these things are such that they are going to be turned to good by a God who loves us, a God who cares for us, a God who's transformative, a God who is excited for who we are. This is the message of Rav Shaul, a rabbi of the first century, who has been considered to be something other than that. And as he's making a case for the good news that he carries, the book of Romans really was written by Shaul because he wanted those who lived in Rome to understand what his message was. And he wanted his message to be understood with clarity. He wanted his message to be understood with depth. He wanted his message to be understood in such a fashion where someone could read this letter, and this was one of the few letters that Shaul wrote to those he hadn't already preached and proclaimed in their midst. So he's laying it all out and making it all clear and making it all easy to understand. Most of the rest of the letters that we have in the New Covenant are Shaul writing points of specific instruction to correct people that he has already taught, that he already has relationship with, and that already have the sum total of most of what he believes and what he understands. So in terms of this, my encouragement to you is that it is clear from the Word of God that as it says, God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Because those whom he knew in advance, he also determined in advance would be conformed to the purpose of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. Here's the truth. The truth is there is plan, there is purpose for you. The truth is that you have been made to draw close to God. The truth is that who you were before God ever got a hold of you was important and significant, but is being cleansed, purified, and being made to be more and more like Messiah. And the distinctions that you carry, I believe, are distinctions that God has planted in you. And one of the things that I have said many times is I really believe that your limitations are at least as important as your giftings, because God has made you to do specific and wonderful things. And none of us stand left to our own devices, but all of us stand together. Shabbat Shalom. I trust that you will end up being blessed. I trust that you will be kept safe. I trust that you will take seriously the sufferings that are going on around us, but understand that we have something so much greater and so much more wonderful that's before us. And I trust that you will not be scandalized by the difficulty of the present age, and that you will end up being able to be a blessing and be an encouragement to those who don't have this sort of understanding. Thanks so much, and Shabbat Shalom from Utica.